Hi, my name is Awilda Jimenez. I'm a virtual counseling specialist teacher from PS 386 in the Bronx. This student-facing video has been created in partnership with Maria Friedland from the Division of Multilingual Learners. Hi, friends. Thank you for coming back to Social Studies. We're going to continue to study the events that led to the war with Great Britain. And today we're going to focus on a lesson titled Protests in Colonial America and Colonial New York. And our lesson objective is we're going to analyze a variety of sources and explain how the colonists used different forms of protests to make their voices heard. Okay, now you already began studying some images and videos having to do with protesting, what the colonists were doing to protest as a result of their anger towards the British government over taxes and other acts that were imposed. Let's just review some vocabulary. So there's different forms of protest. You can have a peaceful protest or a nonviolent protest. You can do this by marching, singing, writing letters or sending emails, making phone calls. Violent protests require the use of weapons, destroying things, breaking things, hurting people. And boycotting. A boycott is a form of a nonviolent or peaceful protest, and it happens when lots of people get together and decide to not buy something or stop doing something because it will result in the loss of money. So for example, currently, there are people boycotting Amazon because they want the Amazon leader, the CEO, to pay his workers a fair wage, right? To pay them what they're worth because they work so hard. So he's not really listening. So they decided to get together and send messages to everyone to say, hey, stop buying from Amazon, because if they begin to lose money, then maybe they'll listen to us and pay workers a fair wage. So some big ideas that I want you to take away from this lesson is that protests have happened throughout the world, not just during colonial times. There are peaceful ways of protesting and violent ways of protesting. And today we're going to evaluate, are the protests effective or ineffective? The way the colonists are choosing to protest the British government, right? Is it effective? And what evidence do we have, right? Are there new laws? Is there a new government? Is justice being served? Or is it ineffective? Meaning the colonists are protesting, but the British government and soldiers are reacting by not giving them what they want and punishing them. So we'll see. So yesterday you have this source in English and Spanish from your Passport to Social Studies workbook, and you started filling out the answers to some of the questions. As we continue with today's lesson, you can go back and revise any answers that you want to based on what we learned today. So we're going to focus, here's a timeline of events, and we're going to zoom in on the Tea Parties, right? We already know that the relationship between the colonists and the British soldiers and the British government are not good, right? We learned that here with the taxes and acts that were imposed on the colonists by the British government. Now we're going here, right? Right after the Tea Act, right? So the Tea Act began in May of 1773. And then we have in December, the beginning of all these tea parties. So let's begin with the Boston Tea Party to understand what a tea party is, who was involved, what was done, why it was done, and how it was done, right? So we're thinking about our 5 W's. You already have this image, right, that you've studied. Now let's go to the video.
The Boston Tea Party, December 16th, 1773. The Boston Tea Party was a protest against British taxation. In 1773, the British Parliament passed the Tea Act. This meant that the British East India Company had a monopoly on the American tea trade. The colonials were angry. There were public protests throughout the colonies over this interference in American business. Cries of "no taxation without representation" were made. This meant that colonial Americans wanted to be taxed by American representatives, not the British Parliament. On December 16, 1773, the Sons of Liberty, led by Samuel Adams, planned to show the Parliament how they felt about the Tea Act. They boarded the British ships docked in Boston Harbor, dressed up as Indians, and dumped nearly $1 million worth, in today's money, of tea in the water. This event came to be known as the Boston Tea Party. The British Parliament passed the Coercive Acts as punishment, but this only strengthened the resistance to the British Crown and pushed the two sides closer to war. Subscribe to our channel for more.
All right, so you should, based on this video, you should have some ideas on the Boston Tea Party, right? Took place in 1773. And the colonists destroyed, right, over $1 million worth of tea. Now, let's think. Was that an effective way of protesting or an ineffective way? Did the colonists get what they want? Were the tea taxes taken away? I don't know. I heard the word punishment in there. So if you want to go back and listen to the video one more time to think about what the consequences were, that will help us understand that maybe the Boston Tea Party was not an effective way of protesting. Okay, guys, so we're gonna study the New York City Tea Party. And as you are listening, I want you to think about who's involved, who are the people in the New York City Tea Party, what happened, when did it happen, where did it happen, why did it happen, and how. And that will help us think about whether this form of protesting was effective or ineffective. On April 18, 1774, the Nancy, commanded by Captain Benjamin Lockyer, finally anchored or docked or arrived at Sandy Hook, New Jersey. According to the New York Journal, its cargo consisted of 698 chests of tea. The people who were supposed to receive the tea sent a note to him saying they would not accept the tea. They advised Lockyer that for the safety of your cargo, your vessel, and yourself, it will be most prudent, most reasonable, or most smart for you to return to England. Members of the New York chapter of the Sons of Liberty took charge of the Nancy at Sandy Hook and prevented or stopped its crew from deserting or escaping the ship, and escorted or brought Lockyer into New York City, where he agreed to return to England with the tea. Was this a peaceful way of protesting or a violent one? Let's continue to read. Meanwhile, on April 22nd, 1774, the ship London arrived in New York City, now under the command or the lead of a Captain Chambers. Although Chambers claimed that he had no tea aboard, the Sons of Liberty had received word from Philadelphia that he was smuggling or stealing 18 chests of tea for his own profit, meaning to make his own money, hidden among the ship's blankets. He was lying. Chambers was taken into custody, imprisoned, and members of the Sons of Liberty searched the ship, discovered the tea chests, broke them open, dumped the tea into the river, and brought the busted or broken chests back to the city, where they were used to ignite bonfires in the streets. So this picture here shows you how they took the broken chests and burned them, made huge fires in the street. All right, friends. So as you're trying to evaluate whether this was a peaceful form of protesting, a nonviolent form of protesting, and whether it was effective or ineffective, I want you guys in your Passport to Social Studies workbook, page 157. You also have this on Google Classroom if you don't have your workbook. I want you to illustrate. You can go back and listen to the audio. Illustrate what was happening during the New York Tea Party. All right. You can use some information from the sources to help you label your illustration. Show what was happening and how it was happening. And then on Google Classroom, you can also use the 5 W's that I asked of you in the beginning to help you jot down some notes on what people did during the Tea Party in New York. And if you think this Tea Party was an effective form of protest, why or why not? And finally, you can go on Google Classroom. There's a link to our class Flipgrid, and record yourself explaining what happened during the New York City Tea Party. You can hold up your illustration. You can show us your illustration and teach off of it if you'd like, or you can just summarize what you understand from the New York City Tea Party. All right, friends, thank you for coming to Social Studies, and I'll see you next time.